So it is now my pleasure to introduce the keynote speaker this afternoon, Leah Bannon. Leah has worked for over a dozen agencies as a federal employee, contractor, sub, 18Fer, and U.S. Digital Services project manager. She's also a community organizer. She led a Code for America brigade of volunteer civic hackers in DC, and she founded Tech Rebalanced, a day for folks of marginalized and underrepresented genders to gather for civic hacking and training in a supportive environment. Today, she'll talk to us about shipping products that like people and surviving in government, and then she'll be taking your questions. So please join me in welcoming Leah.
Do you have a preference? Your preferences? This mic, or you want to use handheld?
This one's probably
Perfect. Okay. Thank you.
awesome. Hi. Okay. I'm going to attempt to. Okay. Thank you so much for having me here today. I am going to quickly run through some of the projects that I've launched, because I'm going to shortly after that say some slightly heretical things about launching in government, so just so you trust me. I worked with the U.S. Customs and Immigration Service to help launch my USCIS, which was going to allow people for the first time to log in and track the status of their applications online. It was a $200 million, do not quote me on this, $200 million project, about $20 million over and a year behind, and going to take down a whole lot of things. We got it launched. I also helped launch analytics.usda.gov, which provides data and traffic information to government websites from Google Analytics that we collect for almost all federal government websites, and a bunch of cities and counties have copied it, like Philly. I worked with the Federal Election Commission. They are the agency in charge of all campaign finance data. So if you ever see anything in the news about money being raised or spent, or PACs, super PACs, what they're spending money on, where they're getting it from, that's all coming from the Federal Election Commission. It was very complicated, because trying to get those complicated forms into data that made sense to humans, that was kind of a mess. I also worked with the Department of Justice on building a new FOIA.gov. The Freedom of Information Act is how you get information from the federal government if they're not releasing it publicly. And we were mandated by law to create a single site. Normally you have to go to each individual agency. They all have different rules and regulations on how, different websites, different forms. There's now one site, FOIA.gov. You can go there, fill out a form, get in. I think it's pretty easy to use, but let me know. And now I am on the team running the new VA.gov. I work at the VA. I do not represent them at this moment officially, but my teams now are helping other teams at the VA launch stuff on VA.gov that is user-centered and good. And we're also trying to use data a lot at this point to show how the tools and style that we've built and worked is actually making, giving veterans access to their benefits faster, easier, quicker. So I have seen a lot of launches. I've seen a lot of failed or delayed launches. And I'm going to rant about that for a little bit. I just want to first start by saying thank you for coming to this. It's so awesome to see so many of you, and I think learning more about your job and the government and the policies that rule you and how you can do a better job in your job is one of the best things you can do as someone who works in or near government. And so thank you. That's awesome. Yes. I'd also like to welcome you to more Impostor Syndrome. Who here knows what Impostor Syndrome is? Okay, can someone give me a definition? You don't feel worthy. Yeah, exactly. It's like, you're not really feeling like you belong, that you have enough. Everyone else around you knows way more and knows what they're doing and is a far better expert at this than you, right? Sucks. Everyone has it. Like, okay, wait, who here has never felt this way ever? Awesome. Yeah, no, okay. Thanks. Right. So I think it's especially hard. I think one of the things, especially as you're embarking upon learning a new thing, there's this phenomenon called Dunning-Kruger Effect, which is basically the more you learn, the more you realize what you don't know, and then the more overwhelmed you get with imposter syndrome, right? And I used to recommend people mentor. I still think it's a really great solution, but I don't think it's the full solution. I think it's a really great way to get more solid in your skills, to feel good about yourself helping people. You know, it's kind of like in the healthcare profession, they teach by doing watch one, do one, teach one. That's the way that you've actually proven you know something. And it's good, but that's not the full answer. That doesn't cover everything. And I'd like to get into a little bit more of that. So I think it's especially hard in government tech. I think it's especially hard in tech because it doesn't seem like, I think tech is like, you know, learning a language or learning tennis. You don't start those things and think you need to be Roger Federer on day one or year one or year 10, right? But in tech, I think a lot of people are constantly holding themselves up against the highest, best experts in the world, assuming everyone else knows a lot more than them. But I want to say, like, right here, you bring, because you are coming into tech new or learning new things, you bring skills that we need in tech. We need you, and I am so happy you're here. We need a lot of different angles and expertise and ideas and experiences to help us figure out what we're doing wrong and what we're doing right and how to do more of that and less of the other one. So I think it's also really hard in government because delivering great products that help people that they actually like to use is really hard. It's just really hard everywhere. It's especially hard in government for a lot of different reasons. There's a lot more regulations. There's a lot less money. There's a lot, you know, a lot more things that you're battling. And I'd like to kind of talk about why and how. So has anyone heard of any recent or fairly recent projects in government tech that didn't go so well? Any big disasters lately? Healthcare.gov. All right. I did not see the audience. Okay. Healthcare.gov is a great example. Healthcare.gov is very interesting because it was unique because people were paying attention. That is the only reason it is special. It is the norm. It is how things normally happen in government. And if you're dealing with that and struggling with it, you are not the only one. My organization, the US Digital Service, got started as the kind of fixers of healthcare.gov. They came in and they fixed it, and then they were the kind of golden unicorns from Silicon Valley, and then they went back to Silicon Valley and tried really hard to care about Google ads, and found that that was hard now that they knew that they could give people healthcare, right? The biggest thing about healthcare was that it was going to take down President Obama's legacy. You need people to sign up for healthcare to work, right? You need a lot of healthy people and some unhealthy people, and then you trade off on needing the money. But we were not going to reach the enrollment numbers because people couldn't use the website. So can everyone hear when I'm like moving back and forth? Is it, yeah? Okay, cool. But I think one of the most important things that they found and that they've said over and over and over again is it was not crazy brain genius AI blockchain brilliance that helped them do that. It was very basic standard things that are common and standard at high quality modern tech organizations that are very difficult in government for a lot of reasons. It's agile, it's user-centered design, open source, and lean, fail fast. Those are the standards for how you build tech well. Those are very easy to buy from contractors right now and very easy to make work well. And I'll explain a little bit more of that later. But I have some quibbles with the fail fast idea, but mostly I like the sentiment. Has anyone heard of this concept? Yeah, can someone define it for me? Hands? No one wants to define failure for me? No? Okay. Okay, so it's this idea, it comes from, it's this idea that you You run small, quick tests. You don't wait until, you know, launch day to figure out if your thing works. You start small, you build fast, you figure out what works and what doesn't, you adjust, you change. And I think it's a good solution for imposter syndrome, as long as you're continuing to remember and talk about what didn't work and why it was hard. You know, I talk about FOIA.gov as if it's this great accomplishment, and I'm deeply proud of it, but like, where's Hunter? I was just talking to Hunter. I went to see him like right after that project launched, and I was like, oh yeah, what was that like? And he was like, you didn't really talk to people. I hung out with your girlfriend a lot. Like, I was so burned out and overwhelmed, right? Like, we need to talk about this more, and we need to not engage in this like collective amnesia that like government leadership is engaging in when they put billions of dollars into a tech project and expect it to work when it never works. And I think that's also how you build community and how you stay sane in government, right? You have people around you when your leadership is saying, I need this by this launch date. You should be able to give it to me. Why can't you give it to me, right? Or their leadership is, and it's not really their fault because they're just translating it down to you. What you really need to do is like talk to people about what's hard, especially people at your level, because they're the ones who are struggling with the same things, and you'll find out that the game is a little bit rigged and it's a little harder than people actually normally talk about. You go to Data Donuts, you know, you go to these events, you find the people who are working on this, who care about the similar stuff as you, and then you support them and you support their harebrained schemes, and you come fly down late at night when you don't have time and you're in meetings all day to come speak at their things. Like, you support them because that's how you build and stay sane in this world. And you do one-on-one coffees with people like on a regular, like once a month. Let's do a video chat, like stay in touch with people, keep talking to them about what's working. This is how I found that this isn't working anywhere, right? This is how I know this, and this is how I feel have the confidence to stand in front of you and tell you this, right? But I also want to get away from this fail fast thing because words have power, and you are not a failure. Government employees are not failure. If you are trying, if you are showing up and trying to learn more and you are working hard to help people, you're not a failure. The game is rigged. Much of the delays and extra costs and problems and delays are normal. That is how technology gets built. One of the jokes in Silicon Valley is you build the first 80% of software, and then you get ready to start doing your launch things and your final checks, and then you build the next 80% of your software. And we all know this. You're laughing. Like, we all know this, but we don't talk about it because we are afraid to admit that, or we're worried that, or we're rightly worried we're going to get attacked for saying it. You know, I don't make friends a lot of times when I say it to leadership. But it's the normal, beautiful chaos of making tech and data and zeros and ones something that actually makes sense to people and helps them in their daily life. I think the real problem is really more the big public launch dates that we keep agreeing. They're self-owned. We don't need to keep doing this. We don't need to keep announcing this. And when I say this, I'm talking to the lead people who can actually make the decisions, not y'all who are often being told you don't have a choice, right? But I will give some ideas on solutions. I think this really bothers me a lot because it burns people out and it's not fair, and y'all are here because you want to make the world better, I think, most of you, yeah? And like, it's not a great way to keep our government moving forward. Building technology is like a symphony. It is like, I'm gonna write the tuba part and you're gonna write the piccolo part and you're gonna sing on top of it and expect that to sound good together. And we're all gonna do it separately and not talk to each other. And then on concert night, we're gonna get together, it's gonna be great, and it's gonna sound great to users who've never heard it before, and some people who've never even played it before are gonna automatically know how to play it and make it work. No, that doesn't work. The only, let me be clear, the only way to build software and technology and not cause massive billion dollar failures is to start in small teams, get the tuba player and the piccolo player and the singer together, working together, build something, test it out, play it for someone outside, maybe someone who you want to impress eventually, get their feedback, make some changes, repeat, and just keep doing that until you eventually get towards something that works for people, that makes sense to them, that works. Agile and user-centered design are the only ones. I already said that. So how does this kind of work from start, right? You start with an educated guess or a legal mandate, which is hopefully an educated guess, if you're lucky. Or you've got new funding, or you're here trying to learn more about making things better, right? And this is, you've got a good lead. You're in this space, you're talking to people a lot about it, you're learning more about it. This is a great place to start, but it is not the place to say, now I'm going to go off on my own and write the solution and make it work. Sorry, can I turn on this and not screw up so I can actually look at everyone? Hello. Okay. Is this going to work or no? Okay. Right. Okay. So, where was I? You don't go off and dream up your hypothetical symphony on your own and then come back, and you research the problem space. Now I'm still facing that way, even though I'm holding this. It's where my notes are.
You want a separate podium over here?
No, I'm good. Thank you. So you research the problem space, right? You talk to the actual people who you are trying to build a thing for. A lot of times, if someone is asking you and demanding a question from you about the software or how it's going to work or what it's going to do, and you don't know the answer and you're feeling really anxious because you're not exactly sure even how to figure out the answer is probably we need to talk to users. We need to go out and talk to people and interview them and ask them how it works. You need to figure out what is the process they take end to end, right? Like they're going on, like we've got to build a thing for a bus, right? So you start by saying, where do people start? They start their day, they plan when they're going to get their bus, they get on the bus, they ride it, they pay before they ride it, they get off, they get to their destination, right? And then you start and you talk to them and you ask them and you interview them, what works about this? What doesn't? What is the most problematic and painful part of it? What is the hardest part? And they will definitely tell you, and you will definitely start finding some patterns. And you really don't need to talk to more than like 5 to 9 people to start finding really good patterns and problems. And that you focus on those problems and you build towards those actual problems. You don't start with a solution or that is the game being rigged against you. You're never going to make it great if you have to start with a solution that is not based on actually talking to people about what they need and what their real problems are. But that's the first part, right? So you understand the problem, and then you come up with some ideas about what the solutions are, but those are not, you don't know. Like, think of it like a science experiment, right? You've done your research, you've looked into it, and you come up with an experiment of what you think will solve it. But you have to test that with real people before you know if it actually solves their problem. Because most of the time they're going to say, this is great, it helps me in this way, but if you could kind of tweak it in this other way so that I can access it on my phone and so that I can send it to my daughter or random little things, it would be way more helpful to me if you could actually do this part. And then you go back and you build another version of it. And the idea is, like, if you can build as quickly as possible, as simply as possible, something that is enough of like a theater stage that people can kind of pretend it's real and use it, but give you some feedback on whether or not it works, that's how you really start figuring out quickly and dispel risk. And you figure out what you avoid building things that nobody wants or needs or makes sense to them. You save. So a lot of people, I think of this stuff in this phase as delays or extra work to do ahead of time, but it saves you so much rework and problems later. Plus the bonus of actually building something people want is really nice. Then you just keep going, you keep testing, you keep working, you keep testing, you keep showing it to people, seeing what they think, keep testing, keep doing that for a while. But all along, the biggest thing is you're saying, how do I get them from point A to point B, right? And like, if your leadership is coming to you and saying, well, how do you do it faster? How do you do it better? You can articulate and identify what are these stages from A12 to 13? Like, what are the different stages going through? And what are the features that you really, really need to get from one step to the next? And what are nice to have? And people are really bad at prioritizing just kind of across randomly huge groups. But if you can get them to prioritize within that one step, features against themselves that are more alike, it's a lot easier for people for your leadership to then say, okay, fine, we can cut this and this, but I must have this, right? And so I talked really fast, but I think the other really big thing I want to talk about is deadlines, right? Like these, like deadline. If someone is committing to a deadline and it's for software and they have not finished building it yet and they have not tested it with real users and it's more than a week away, they're selling you a bill of goods, or, and more likely and more importantly, you are not enabling them to tell you, and you are not empowering them to tell you that they are not sure. Because I promise you, no one is sure if it's going to work until they've built it and tested it with people who are actually going to use it. That's the only way that you ever figure out if it actually works for people and is going to not just become this nightmare symphony that doesn't make sense on day one because you haven't practiced, right? You might be thinking, like, this crazy lady can tell her bosses, because she doesn't care, that she doesn't have to do deadlines, but that is not a solution for me. And that is fair. I have a lot of privilege because I have this track record and I can say, I've seen this before, right? So what I would say, and my best recommendation to you, one, keep building that safety net. It's still scary for me because I'm getting increasingly yelled at by increasingly senior political officials, right? So I think the more that you can build your community and keep talking to people and especially the people who you learned this with and who are at your level and say, am I crazy? Like, I'm pretty sure that it's not possible to do this thing. Then you can more easily go back to these people and say, I mean, I'll keep trying. We can pretend this date will work, but no one can know for sure. The other major thing that helps is asking questions. I found, so one of my biggest heroes is DeRay McKesson. He wrote a book within the last year. It's, I think, one of the best books of my generation. You should go read it. It's amazing. It will help you stay more sane and focus on what really matters. And he says curiosity is a skill. And again, like, I really want to applaud you and thank you for working on this and being curious, and apply that in everything you do. So when someone is coming to you and saying, I must have it by this date, that's when you say, why? Like, who is demanding this date, or who is demanding a date? What, tell me more. You know, people want to be heard, and that is one of the most important things and most powerful things you can do in government is give them time and say, tell me more about why. Let's figure out something that actually makes sense. It's also a kind of superpower, because once you learn that thing, then that's something that you can use in a meeting later, right? So you can, like, a lot of times people will tell us that we can't do something with users or talk to users for a certain amount of time or something because of the Paperwork Reduction Act. This is a very old act that was designed to minimize the amount of time the government can require people to fill out forms, like the amount of time we force them, but it turned into, no, you're not allowed to do usability testing, which is not what it is. But I can promise you, every time someone tells me that, what they don't want to hear is, no, you're wrong, right? They're probably not making it up, and they're probably not doing it just to be a jerk. Maybe sometimes edge cases, but a lot of times they're getting pressure from someone else that they don't have the power to push back against. So maybe together, if you ask them and you talk to them and you say, tell me more. Why do you think that is? What law are we talking about? And go read that law. That's another superpower. The more you know, the more you can then use again next time. Yeah. So Curiosity is a skill. Thanks for working on it. I think we have time for questions, right? Yeah.
And just so you know, if you ask me here, you can press the little thing that looks like an ear and speak into the mic. So here's cool. And for any of you back here, so questions, let's see one back here. I'll need the mic out here. There you go. Name, rank, and serial number.
Patrick Atwater, Argos, CADC. California has embarked on a new $36 million Office of Digital Innovation in the mold of kind of 18F U.S. Digital Service. So if you were to, knowing what you know today, if you were to go back in time and tell yourself when they were launching that, like one big thing you would do differently, what would that be?
I would spend more time looking, well, I mean, a lot of the stuff I think I know they're already doing, which is like talking to a lot of the organizations in civic tech right now, like Code for America, Government Digital Service. Ontario Digital Service has some really great stuff. They really care a lot about consent, which I appreciate, especially in tech and my life in general. I would focus on diversity recruiting from day one. I think that's often something that people worry about as like, oh God, we just got to get to like the first day and then we'll focus on that. And every time you don't focus on that, every hire that you don't focus on that, you make it harder and you make it less enticing for people to go work there. And one of the things that 18F did that was, we were like kind of good at it a bit. If you don't have a diverse workforce, then you don't have a diverse ways of just existing on your team. Like more diversity on your team makes more safety and more ideas and more conflicting, you catch more things, you have better ideas, you have more fleshed out ideas. You like, yeah, I guess I'm trying to, I mean, I think one of the biggest things was like, I got an insight into what the different paths are for my abilities. I think if you don't have that, if you only have people, if you only hire people and you say, we'll get you in the door, but then you have to conform to exactly what we're like, and you have to wear a perfect business suit. And there's nothing wrong with wearing a business suit. I'm just gonna say, like, I think you put it in your calculation, right? I wear a business suit if I need to impress someone at the White House and get them to agree to give veterans more benefits. That's worth it to me. I don't wear it today because I don't need to impress someone who cares about business suits. And I do want to make the field more open and welcome to people who don't have a ton of business suits, because that's classism. So like the more like ideas and opportunities and different paths for a career that you have in your organization, the more you're able to hold on to people, the more your organization is able to grow and change and adapt and be awesome.
One more? Anybody else? Okay.
Actually,
Oh,
yeah.
wait, we did have one.
Do you have any advice for getting feedback on the products that you create?
You mean like from users or?
Yeah.
I mean, well, so the biggest thing I would say is it doesn't need to be complicated. Because of the Paperwork Reduction Act, we are limited to talking to no more than 9 people at a time in the federal government. That's more than enough. Like if you start hearing the same thing from 5 people, like if I'm in a room and my eyes are closed and 5 of my friends tell me that the room is blue, I don't need a statistically representative number. There could be millions of people in that room, but I don't need a statistically representative number to know they're probably telling me that something they're seeing, right? So I'd say like, you'll notice stuff, you'll be amazed by how much you'll learn and how much you'll improve by just talking to 5 to 9 people. You're not going to fix and test the whole thing. Just start with like whatever you've been working on for the past month. Get the feedback from 5 to 9 people. You will learn so much. Make some changes, do it again. Make some changes, do it again. Any more questions?
All right, yeah, we got to save time. So thank you very much. Nice. Very cool. Thank you. And I'm sure that if you'd like to hit Leah up in the break times and whatever, she'd love to chat.